Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are going to discuss the story The Cutoff, written by Chetan Bhagat. This is both a realistic as well as motivational story of one young Mr. Gautam Arora who undergoes a lot of parental pressure and finally decides to commit suicide as he was not able to meet his parents' expectations of getting enrolled in an A-grade college for his graduation despite having scored well in his class 12 examinations. So through this story, the author is trying to criticize both our Indian education and social systems which encourage this culture of meritocracy and marks, while the real focus should be on the acquisition, should be on the learning of skills for life. He also tries to talk about this widening gap or widening generation gap between today's youth and their parents. And finally, he says that we should be able to do well, we should be able to have individual capacities despite studying either in A grade or B grade colleges. They do not really decide our individual capacities, and we should be able to do well in our life despite having studied in either A grade or B grade colleges. So now let's try to move on. Now let's talk about the biographical details of the author. As we all know, Chetan Bhagat is a very famous Indian writer of the present generation. He graduated in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi and went on to finish his postgraduate program, that is PGP, from IIM Ahmedabad. So besides being one of the best Indian writers as well as one of the bestsellers, he has written many novels, and Time magazine has rightly recognized him as one of the 100 most influential people across the globe. Some of his well-known novels are Two States, published in the year 2009, Half Girlfriend in the year 2014, and The Three Mistakes of My Life, published in the year 2008. His recent novel or work, that is Revolution 2020, is a thought-provoking or a very subtle critique of Indian engineering education today. Now talking about the story, as we already discussed, this story is all about this rat race for meritocracy for A-grade or top colleges or universities in India. So we do not really assess an individual based on their skills, but just based on their marks in a certain examination, which is a bad sort of culture which leads to nothing actually. Now here is the link of a news report on Indian students' tendency to commit suicide. So according to the report, earlier every hour one Indian student committed suicide. But the last year saw the most number of suicides or highest number of suicides in the last 25 years. That means during COVID-19 period, the students were not able to meet their friends, the fellow students at colleges, universities and schools, and therefore they couldn't really express their feelings to their parents or anybody, and which led to a lot of psychological trauma, and this finally resulted in their suicides. I will also share this link in the description box of the video. Now let's try to move on. Now here is some motivation for all of us, and particularly the story of Albert Einstein is very interesting because he had failed in all his subjects at school, and he was also dismissed from school. But still, he went on to become one of the most, let's say, celebrated scientists across the globe. Here is some more motivation for all of us. We already know these great personalities and the hardships that they went through, but they never gave up. They realized their worth, and we already know everybody is worthy in this world. And we must be able to understand or realize our worth and work on that to be really outstanding, to be really exceptional, and to be really successful. Some more two great personalities in our business world today. And finally, none other than the great Sachin Tendulkar, who also struggled a lot. He failed in his 10th class examinations, but today we celebrate him as the god of cricket. A funny picture which explains how nothing in this world is useless. Even the inanimate objects in this world are not useless, and we, living human beings, have so much of potential, so many kind of skills, and we can excel this world if we kind of really determine. We will now try to discuss the story, and the story revolves around our central character, and that is Gautam Arora, who is 18 years of age and who has decided to commit suicide. But before that, he wants to meet Neeraj, and he goes to meet Neeraj at Costa Coffee, DLF Metropolitan Mall, Sake. And along with Neeraj, his girlfriend Anjali has also come there. Now, who is Neeraj? Neeraj is a senior school mate of Gautam and also a medical practitioner. And the next question is, why has Gautam gone to meet Neeraj? And the reason is he wants to know some painless way to kill himself. Now there is a kind of a different so let's say different thing to the story where Neeraj is actually shown adding some brown sugar in Anjali's coffee, and he says, I do not know what this girl would do after marriage. Now, all the while during this interaction between Neeraj and Gautam, Anjali was kind of only listening to her iPod, and she had just come there for shopping with her boyfriend and not to listen to the problems of Gautam. And Neeraj also says that he was dating Anjali only because her father had given her a car and driver and that she looked okay. So looking at all this gender sort of discrimination, gender bias, and all these things, we can understand a kind of moral and ethical degradation in our culture today. Gautam was extremely studious and committed to studies. So Neeraj knew that Gautam had already topped the school those days. Now during the interaction, Gautam also tells Neeraj that he had scored 92% of marks in his board 12th examinations. And listening to this news, Neeraj gets absolutely stunned, absolutely surprised in this let's say excitement, he pulls out Anjali's earphones and asks her to listen to what Gautam was saying. So according to Neeraj, this was an extremely great achievement. So 92 percentage was in no way a low grade, a low number. But unfortunately, Gautam had only studied during his school life. He had not really lived his life. He had not really enjoyed his life. He had not even inculcated any hobbies there. So his routine was very simple. That is, eating 3 times a day, then sleeping for 5 hours a day, and rest of the time was spent on his studies. That's all. He didn't do anything different. He didn't do anything extra. Now Neeraj says, with 92% you should be fine because you would be able to get admission in any good college there. But Gautam had a different problem. His parents wanted him to study in only an A ranked or a top college under Delhi University. So it can be only SRCC, that means Sri Ram College of Commerce, or Stephens College of Commerce, or the Hindu College, and nothing different from this, nothing less than this. Okay, so Neeraj says they are not really good marks, they are not really high marks according to SRCC's merit list, according to Stephens merit list, or according to Hindus' expectations. And then he pulls out some newspaper, let's say cutting, from his bag and hands those over to Neeraj. And Neeraj reads that and he says, wow, check out Lady Sri Ram College. BCom honors is at 95.5%. And this looking at this, Anjali sort of, reacts saying that this is anyway a ladies college. And moreover, Neeraj doesn't have these many, let's say, marks. So this is already ruled out. Let's not talk about this. Listening to this insult from Anjali, Neeraj gets angry and gives her a dirty look, upon which Anjali leaves the place. Now Neeraj, let's say, tries to tell Gautam not to commit suicide because he was a school topper. He was a really intelligent student. He was really a deserving student. As Neeraj tries to convince Gautam that you should not commit a suicide because you are really an intelligent student, Gautam counter questions Neeraj and he says, so what do I do? He says that in a very loud voice. He was sort of, getting angry and impatient. Shall I stay back in school and carry that kind of, aura with me? And in reality, I'm not really doing well. Okay. So this is what he's trying to ask Neeraj there. And he says, this tag of being topper makes things really worse in my life. Because once a topper, people expect you to be always a topper. Nothing less than that. And he says his parents had already thrown a party to their friends and relatives, like he had kind of, really achieved something absolutely great, absolutely kind of, excellent. And he also says that he had cut a cake during the party on which the icing said family superstar. So when my family is treating me or treated me like a hero, how can I be a zero now? Okay, listening to all this kind of, celebration and all this royal treatment to Gautam, Neeraj says that's really nice. But Gautam says, not nice at all. This is not at all nice. All the relatives congratulated my, let's say, mother. They sort of, wished my mother on my achievement, and all of them expect me to be a kind of, a great investment banker on Wall Street. If I couldn't become a great investment banker on Wall Street, at least they expect me to be studying in a good college under Delhi University. Now, during this kind of an interaction, Neeraj tries to push the coffee cup towards Gautam, but Gautam is not really interested in consuming coffee or having coffee there. And he blames and he says, it's all because of that tiny calculation error. All my agony, all my, let's say, tension is because of that tiny calculation error or that tiny, let's say, calculation mistake I made during the examination. Neeraj has been trying to, let's say, boost Gautam's morale, and he says that if not a branded college, you can go to any other college. That's not a big deal. You will still have friends, you will still have a good time with them, you will still have a lot of fun with them, and that's very important. Whether it is a branded college or not, that doesn't really matter. But Gautam says, brand is a brand. Because if you do not study in a branded college or in a top ranked college, in an A grade college, you wouldn't be able to get a very good job, a decent job. At the same time, you wouldn't be able to get admission in a top MBA school. So this is why we must study in a branded college or in a top ranked college. But then Neeraj says you had to be a kind of, bin counter stickler. That means a very, very bookish person, a kind of, very stupid person who doesn't take any chance with their, let's say, efforts. So for instance, to get 95, 97%, you had to be a very, let's say, studious person, a stupid person who only concentrates on studies. Okay, they check their answers 20 times. Such people who are extremely studious, extremely silly, they kind of check their answers 20 times before they submit them. And also Gautam said that he had checked his answer 5 times, still that tiny or silly calculation error went unnoticed. And now Neeraj is trying to say, Gautam, please relax. That paper is already done. There is no point in discussing something that has been already done. And sticklers, that means these stupid people, silly people, bookish people, they don't do good or they don't do well in their life. For that to lead a good life, you have to be innovative. You have to be imaginative. You have to have good skills. You have to have real talent. Okay? But Gautam again says that that's not what DU thinks. DU only considers marks. It only considers your grade, and depending on that, you would be kind of given an admission. That's all. Now Gautam tries to tell the real problem of himself, and he says, you wouldn't understand my problem because my father has openly proclaimed in his office that I would join SRCC. That means the top college in Delhi. And if I do not, then our entire prestige will kind of go away. We will be humiliated. That's like a prestige issue or prestige question. Therefore I must join in an A grade college, and that's the only choice I have. Okay, and I cannot go to my father with a kind of a second ranked college admission there, and that's why I'm in trouble, I'm in tension. Okay, and I wouldn't be able to deal with this problem if I couldn't make it to an A grade or a top college under the university. I wouldn't be able to kind of excuse myself for the rest of my life. And finally, this conversation between Neeraj and Gautam was disturbed by an SMS sent by Anjali, and this SMS said that she was at Kimia and she had tried a dress and she wanted Neeraj's opinion on that. And without really going there, Neeraj simply said, "It looks good, you can buy it, honey." That's all. And finally, Gautam tells Neeraj that you must leave now because since she is a rich dad's daughter, she is rich, she might behave badly with you, she might scold you, or in the worst case, she might ditch you. So you better go and meet her and be with her. When Neeraj was leaving after the SMS from Anjali, he went to pay the bill, coffee bill, but Gautam stopped him and he said he would pay the bill instead. So Gautam felt he should pay the bill because we should make people happy before we die. So according to Gautam or in Gautam's opinion, it was one of the ways to make somebody happy by paying the coffee bill there. So on a lighter note, Neeraj also accepted his request and he said, of course, I will take this as your treat for cracking your boats and you can pay the bill. So finally Neeraj smiled at Gautam, he ruffled his hair and left the place. Now after this interaction, after this meeting between Neeraj and Gautam, Gautam went home and during the dinner time, he met his parents at the dinner table. And at that time, his father asked him, when is the university likely to announce the cutoff or the results? And Gautam said, in a few days of time, not very long from now, very shortly, the university is likely to announce the cutoff. Okay, and while he was saying this, Gautam actually looked at the fan. He thought of committing suicide by hanging from the ceiling fan, but then he got scared that I or he might get suffocated. He might feel suffocated if he hanged himself from the ceiling fan. So he says this is not the best option for me. Then After the dinner, his mother was cutting some mangoes, okay, or some slices of mangoes. He looked at the knife in his mother's hand and he thought, I would sort of, cut my veins or some kind of, blood veins, and I will kill myself. But then he thought, this is also going to be very, very painful. This will hurt me a lot. So he dropped this plan as well. And finally, like his father says, my office people are asking for me, asking for a party. So that's the reason why I'm actually asking you for your results. And then the mother argues that I told you to call them to the party. We threw for our neighbors and relatives. So when we gave a party to our neighbors and relatives, why didn't you call them? That's the question by Neeraj's mother. Sorry, Gautam's mother. Answering to Gautam's mother's question as to why didn't you really invite your office people to the same party which we offered to our neighbors and relatives, Gautam's father answers saying that my office people or my colleagues are actually very sophisticated. They are well behaved, well mannered, they are very modern, they are very cultured, and he says that they cannot fit in with your brothers and sisters. Now Gautam's mother gets a little angry and she says that my brothers are no less sophisticated than your office people. In fact, last year my brothers went to Singapore on vacation. At least they are better than your family. Forget about your office people. Compared to your family, they are much better. They are much progressive. And then Gautam's father laughs at his, let's say, wife's sullen expression. Sullen means like, let's say a kind of mischievous or some sort of, angry, like very light angry way of, expressing anger there. So Gautam's father's happiness levels had never decreased since the time Gautam had got his results. So he was throughout the sort of time he was happy. So even though his mother's expression was a kind of very arrogant, he did not find it arrogant. He simply laughed at it and he ignored that. And then his father openly tells that his office people or colleagues actually want drinks. And he says he would arrange one more party for them when Gautam gets into SRCC or Stephens College. Now, Gautam tries to tell about his father that his father worked in sales division of Tata Tea, and they had been supplying tea to their, let's say, neighbors free of cost from many days there, or from last 5 years there. So he says that they had more well wishers than they are required. On a proud note, Gautam's father says that his country head had called him and congratulated him for Gautam. And he also said that your son is very brilliant and he must go to only Stephens College, because this college is one of the reputed colleges or is one of the top ranked colleges under Delhi University. Later, Gautam's mother informs him that Gupta auntie from next door had come to ask some help for her daughter who is studying in class 11, and Gautam wanted to ask whether she's pretty or not, but he did not dare to ask because he knew that he was not going to be alive after some time, as he had already decided to commit suicide. And after some time, Gautam went back to his, let's say, own room after having dinner. Though he had not really zeroed down or he had not really decided the exact mode or means of committing suicide, he was really sure that he wanted to commit suicide. And also, he decided to write a letter, and not just any kind of routine letter, old way of writing letter, not a cliched letter. He wanted to write a letter that would stand out, that would be exceptional, that would be really different from all other letters or all other suicide notes there. and he decided to write this letter to the education minister. So he went to the Ministry of Education's website, and there was a section called What After Class 12. He sort of, decided to see what is there under that. But this website said that this section is under construction. So finally, he closed the website and he opened his Microsoft Office to type the letter. By the way, the letter that Gautam drafted for the education minister will also be posted in the description box of this video. So for now, we will just go further with this story. So after typing or writing this letter to the education minister, Gautam goes to sleep, and when he woke up next day morning, he saw his maid standing before him with a mithai box, or maybe a kind of sweet box, and that sweet box was of kaju burfi. And imagine that she had bought these kind of sweets from one of the most expensive shops in the town. And why was she basically distributing the sweets? The reason was very simple, that her son had passed class 12 examinations with 42%. We can see the stark difference between Gautam's 92 percentage of marks and his maid's son's 42 percentage of marks, and still she was absolutely happy, extremely happy, and she had almost spent her 1 week's salary or earnings on distributing sweets to all those who were known to her. So you can imagine that sort of happiness celebration with the kind of poor people, or with the sort of lower class people there. So they are absolutely happy for whatever they get. They do not expect too much. So Gautam asked what would he do, that means what would the maid's son do in the future, and she said she did not know. He would do his own business probably. I do not know what he would do. And he can repair mobile phones. He knows how to repair mobile phones. Probably he will carry on with that. Okay. And after this interaction, after this, let's say, sweet box from his maid, he goes to bathroom to have a shower. But he suddenly remembers that the newspaper must have arrived, and he must kind of, cut out, or kind of, take out that admission supplement from it. Otherwise, his parents would take a look at it, and they would realize that the kind of cutoff is always higher than their son's actual grade or actual percentage there, and they would definitely become very nervous. They will become sad. Therefore, before they take a look at the admission supplement or the cutoff, I should go and take it out. So this is what he goes. He picks the newspaper, let's say admission supplement, and he throws that in the dustbin. So this cutting of, let's say admission supplement from the newspaper was his regular practice. So because he did not want his parents to take a look at that. Now, after having his shower or bath, he goes to Chandani Chowk by metro. So there is an area called Chandani Chowk. He goes there by metro, and he asks the way for industrial chemical market. And the reason is simple. He has gone to this place to buy some, let's say, poison to kill himself. So even though he did not know, let's say, or he did not have science as a subject in his class 12 kind of, studies, he knew that, there are some kind of, compounds, or some sort of, chemicals like copper sulfate or ammonium nitrate, which can kill somebody. So he knew about that, and therefore he went to buy those. Now, he bought both the compounds from this industrial chemicals market, but while he was coming home back, he came across a very small but crowded jalebi shop, and he sort of, decided to have some jalebi there, and he thought, why shouldn't I treat myself before I die? So he wanted to have some good, let's say, dish there, and he decided to have jalebi there. And while he was having jalebi, a Muslim couple arrived there and sat before him. That means in front of Gautam. And this was a very happy couple. They had a small child there, and the mother was feeding feeding some jalebi to the child, and after every bite of the jalebi, mother was planting a kiss on this child's cheek there. And this made Gautam really emotional and so on. Now, looking at this incident of love, pure love between a child and his mother, Gautam goes back to his childhood memories and remembers how his parents also loved him unconditionally those days when the marks did not exist, when the grades did not exist during his childhood. So those were kind of, unconditional love sort of, days there. And finally, while he was kind of, remembering all those childhood memories, he also takes a look at ammonium nitrate compound in his hands and felt like, crying really badly. But he didn't really cry because it was a public place, and still he could not really eat all the jalebis on his plate. And he had only one thought. He was in his own world, and he wanted to kind of, decide whether to have this chemical, this poison, before or after dinner. So he had that doubt, and he was sort of, struggling with that. So he decided to have it after dinner because by that time everybody would have gone to sleep or bed, and nobody would notice what is going on with Gautam. So this is what he had a plan there. So his father that night had brought Chinese takeaways from a shop. That means it consisted of American chopsy, and his mother sort of arranged some soya sauce from the kitchen, also vinegar, chili oil, also green cut chilies there, and they all sat to eat on stainless steel plates. So they had dinner, and while having dinner, Gautam looked at the clock and it was 8 p.m. and he had decided to kind of commit suicide by 11 p.m. and then he says 3 more hours to go and that's all. Now, as they are still having a dinner at the dinner table, Gautam's father shares some incidents from his workplace and he says to his wife that one thing, Kalpana, and he says job candidates aren't what they used to be these days. He also says he interviewed new trainees today or that day and all of them were absolutely disappointing. Most of the candidates were ineligible. They did not really deserve to work in our company. And he gives two examples. One is of the boy from Stephens College who was absolutely bright, no doubt, but only when it came to his subjects. And when we asked him a different question, like let's say a practical question as how do you go about creating tea shop chains just like coffee shop chains, he was not able to answer that practical question. He went blank. He did not know anything except his subject knowledge. He was absolutely bookish and all. And the next one was from SRCC, kind of, great institution, and he was also a college topper, but a very arrogant person. And how was he arrogant? He was arrogant because before the interview even started, he asked or he said, "I hope at the end of our meeting you will be able to tell me why I should join Tata Tea and not any other company." So that is arrogance to the kind of highest level. Gautam's father then says that the best candidate was from Bhopal and he was not from any top college and he also had only 80 percentage of marks, and he said that he wanted to learn and he also wanted to show that when you study in a small college you do not lose your life. That's not everything in life. You can still do many great things even if you don't study in a top college in a kind of A ranked or A grade college there. So this is what he said, and therefore we were absolutely impressed, and we selected him. So Gautam's father says that companies need good employees, not just certificates, not just great certificates, not just post certificates. Okay, and these days, and after some time, we have decided to have a meeting to discuss the shortlisting criteria, and we are not going to shortlist only the students or candidates from top colleges. We will now try to include more of students from lower colleges or non-popular colleges. This is what we have decided through this experience. Okay, because getting into top colleges is always a kind of a difficult job. At the same time, we get only studious students there and not really practical. So he says, study the college that you want to study in, figure out their dedication, and make sure that they don't create arrogant nerds. As long as they are not creating bad people, that's okay. Any college which is not even B grade or which is not even A grade is still okay. Then whatever the brand, you will be fine, because first of all you should be polite, you should be kind of well mannered, well behaved, respectable, polite to others. And the world needs good people more than intelligent people, more than knowledgeable people. Sensitive people are required in this world. So Gautam asked, shall I find some other college and get admission there? And Gautam father says, absolutely no problem. You research the college, and if you find a college is better, committed, dedicated, you feel free and take admission there. After the dinner, the phone in the house rings, and Gautam picks the call. And this time, the person from the other side was actually Gautam's father's colleague, and he right away congratulated Gautam on kind of scoring well in his board examinations. And Gautam asked whether should I call my father to speak to you. The other person said, not really required. You just tell him that his mobile is with me and it is safe. And he also tells, we went on a field trip today and your father forgot his phone in my car, and that's the reason I'm now calling you or calling your father. And then sort of Gautam gets confused and he asks, did you go to field trips and for interviews? Then the other person also gets really confused. He says, what sort of interviews are you talking about? We did not do any interviews. We just went to a sort of field trip, or we just went to the Chandigarh office there, that's all. And then Gautam gets absolutely confused. He has no clue what was happening, what was his father trying to tell. He goes to his parents' room there and he turns on the lamp. He moves his father's pillow a bit, and while he was kind of lying on his father's pillow, or sorry, his father's bed there, he could listen to some noise, some kind of sound of some crumpled papers there. And he kind of tries to get those papers out, and he understands that those were the kind of newspaper admission supplements which he used to cut from the newspapers and throw in the dustbin. So his father had all collected them and kept under his mattress there. When Gautam realizes that all the kind of newspaper admission supplements which he used to kind of cut from or tear from the newspapers and throw in the dustbin, his father had all collected them and sort of hidden under his mattress. So he comes to know the real story behind this, and his father had not really kind of interviewed any candidates. That was just a story which he created to motivate Gautam. So then he finally goes to his parents' living room where they were having an argument over the choice of the TV channel. Just like kids, they were fighting with each other in a very light way. And they also offered some watermelon to Gautam when they saw him, but Gautam denied it and came back to his living room or his own room, and he emptied all the chemical bottles in the commode of the toilet. He poured out all the poison there, and he flushed once, and all the worry, all the tension, all the kind of psychological pressure was gone away with that one flush, where the chemicals also disappeared and all his tension also disappeared. And Gautam's mother then tells him finally that I forgot to tell you that Gupta auntie had again come to ask some help for her daughter who is studying in class 11. And this time Gautam said maybe I would try to help her, and he also asked whether she is pretty or not. So on this nice note, the lesson ends here. To conclude, we can say that our focus should be more on acquiring or learning new skills rather than earning just certificates and getting more marks. Because marks and certificates may or may not help us, but skills will definitely help us in the future to be successful. At the same time, irrespective of our college or university we study in, we must be able to prove ourselves. So it doesn't mean that when we sort of get enrolled in a top college or top university, we will be definitely successful, because it's all up to us. Next is, we must not give up on our dreams, our goals, our, let's say, targets, however hard times we face in our life. So we must be able to take up the challenges and just reach our dreams and goals. Also, we must support each other and find solutions to the problems together, because every person is good at something. There is only one criteria which cannot really assess every one of us. So therefore, we must understand there are lots of differences, different skills. Everybody is good at something or the other. We must respect all these differences and uniqueness. And finally, our competition or comparison should always be with ourselves. So yesterday I was this much. Have I gained different today? Have I gained something more today? And that should be the point of our comparison and our competition in life. I hope you have made sense of this story. Please like this video and share it to your friends and others. At the same time, please subscribe to our channel to receive the notification of many more such interesting videos. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.